am so excited. We have Lisa Hellmer here with us today. And I'm so excited because just before this, Lisa and I were chatting, and immediately, like, everything she was saying was things that I want to know about. And I'm just so excited that now we get another hour of that and that we get to share that all with you guys. And we're talking today about riding with physical impairments and para dressage. And before I go into that more, Lisa, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us tonight and to teach us about this topic.
Gladly. I'm glad to be here.
We're so happy to have you here. And thank you to Robin Harder, who connected us with Lisa initially. But after that connection was made, it's like people came out of the woodwork and everyone was like, I love Lisa. I work with Lisa too. I'm so glad that Lisa's going to be on Ask an Expert. And that just makes me so happy. It's fun for me because now we get to know Lisa too and kind of be in her circle. And so this all makes me very happy. But I'll do a quick introduction first so that if you have not worked with Lisa, you have a little bit of more information about who she is and what she's working on. Lisa is a USDF Bronze, Silver, and Gold medalist. She's the head trainer at LCH Equestrian in Ocala, Florida. She's a certified Silver USEF Para Dressage Coach, and she served as the Para Dressage Development Coach for Team USA in 2022 and 2023. She has a background in both classical dressage and eventing, and she brings that unique cross-disciplinary approach to training horses to keep horses happy and riders progressing. And if you're in the Facebook group, you may have seen this morning, I posted photos of Lisa on a horse that I don't know if, Lisa, are you going Grand Prix on, is his name Nico?
Yep, he has successfully competed Grand Prix and he earned me my gold medal. So I did it on my own little 15-3 hand gray pony.
No way. He truly, I saw these photos. Please go to Lisa's website and look at these photos. I was like smitten the second I saw them. Like, you can see a little blaze on his face, and there's photos of him competing in upper level dressage side by side with photos of him out on cross country and show jumping. Just like, and the description says like he has fun doing it all, and it's amazing and so cute. He's adorable.
Thank you. I'll brag for a minute because he's like my golden child now, because he was quite a tricky horse when I got him, and it was kind of handed to me because they were like, he's a bucker, he's lazy, he's a pain in the butt, right? And Nico is 19 this year, which is wild to me. And he has now shown every single level in dressage. He's shown first, second, third, fourth, St. George, Inter 1, Inter 1A, Inter 2, and Grand Prix. He has shown internationally grade 3 and grade 5 para dressage, has gotten a grade 5 para dressage rider on the developing list and to Festival of Champions, and is now working with a grade 1 rider. So he does everything, and he has like exceeded my expectations 1,000 times over. So the moral of the story is just hang in there. And sometimes a traditional approach doesn't work, but they'll tell you the direction that they want to go. And yeah, he has a huge heart. So yeah.
Well, moment of appreciation for Nico. I have like chills as you described all those things that he did or is still doing. That's pretty cool. That's amazing. It's good that he landed with you and that you guys have been able to get him to all those places together.
We now have a really strong bond, and it took a while, but yeah, he's a cool dude.
That's amazing. Well, we were chatting about how best to kind of present tonight's topic. And I think we're going to loosely talk about para dressage first, and then talk more specifically about riding with physical impairments. And we got so many great questions from members. So thank you for everyone who put those questions in the Facebook group. It is so helpful to guide our conversations to really interesting and important places. So thank you to everyone who did that. And to kick us off, who better than Robin, who had the question of, she said, can you tell us how para dressage differs from regular dressage and how it gets graded, etc.?
Yeah, that's a perfect question. So to kind of summarize it, so para dressage stands for parallel to able-bodied. It does not stand for paraplegic or anything like that, which a lot of people get confused. But para means parallel. So it runs alongside with able-bodied dressage. The arena is the same, the judging is the same, the criteria of the horse is the same, the training is the same, right? We have to have a horse that has 3 consistent gaits. We're looking for quality of gaits. And what I think sets para apart from able-bodied dressage is there's a lot more looked at on the horse than on the rider. So as a judge, the objective is really to look at the horse and the execution of the test and allow the rider to sort of sink a little bit into the background that with able-bodied dressage, you'll get comments on the rider effective use of aids if you're crooked or you're bending or you're curling. And some riders are just like that in para, right? So what we look at is the horse straight? We don't care if the rider is straight. And I just think that that's really cool. It actually puts a lot more weight onto the horse and then the training of the horse, because the really correct training shines through in para dressage. So there's 5 grades of para dressage. It starts with grade 1 is the most disabled, and grade 5 is the least disabled. So grades 1, 2, and 3 are ridden in a small arena in a 20 by 40. Grade 1 is just walk, which sounds easy. It's insanely hard because you have to keep an incredibly consistent tempo, connection, and then all of the maneuvers. It's a very complicated test. And then we have grade 2, which is mostly walk and some trot. Movements like walk, leg yield, and you have some trot lengthenings that make the test challenging. Then we have grade 3, which is like the middle of the road. There's a lot of riders that are often sort of bridged between that grade 2 and 3 ride. Grade 3 is walk trot with a lot more trotting. So you have movements like lengthenings in the trot and trot leg yields, smaller figures, serpentines with simple changes like through the walk. And then we have grade 4, which starts to look into like second, third level. So you've got lateral movements like shoulder in, half pass, and counter canter with simple changes. And then grade 5 is, I compare it to 4th level, even though there's no changes at the international level in the Grand Prix test of grade 5, they're optional in the freestyle. But we have basically everything: canter half passes, collection in the canter, counter canter, trot extensions. We've got medium and extended canters. So the bar gets raised. And the idea of the grading system is through all para sport. So it's not just para equestrian, but para sport is massive. There's a lot of other sports that use that same classification and grading system. What it does is it segments the rider's body and determines what limitations, strengths, weaknesses they have in 4 quadrants of their body. And after that classification process, depending on what their scores are in those various places, that determines the grade. So it's supposed to create an equal level playing field based on abilities or lack of limb or range of motion, things like that. What para dressage does not take into their grading process is any kind of cognitive limitation. So if you have a rider that has a mental disability, that's a different track, and that would be like Special Olympics, and there's special sports for riders that have cognitive disabilities. Sometimes with certain physical disabilities, there is a cognitive function to it as well, like a memory loss or a hearing loss or vision. And those are taken into consideration. So if you can only see through one eye or you have limited hearing, sometimes those can happen. We have riders that have had accidents and that were able-bodied, before an accident, and the accident led them into the para dressage world. Or we have riders that are born with a disability, so a limb deficiency or a disease like MS, that kind of led them into the track of para dressage.
What would be an example of a grade 5 disability?
So a great example, I know that Andy Sue is not gonna mind me name dropping her because she rode an eco. So Andy
Oh.
Sue was born without a lower right leg. So she has a limb deficiency and she rides with a prosthetic leg. You would never know it when she's sitting up there, but she has no lower leg. So that is a grade 5. She's the most able because she
Mhm.
has solid trunk function and upper body strength. And she has use of her thigh, but from the knee down, she does not have use of her legs. So she's allowed to ride with a whip on the right. She can use it on the left or the right side, but we use it on the right side, sort of in lieu of her leg.
How interesting. And what is the grading process like? And once you've been graded once, assuming that your abilities don't shift, you stay within that grade and that test. Is that
So
correct?
that's a really good question. So what it's called classification, and it starts at the national level. So you do a national classification first, and there's specific classifiers. Often there are also physiotherapists that go through the classification course. There's actually a huge shortage of classifiers, so if that's ever something that you're interested in, let me know, and I can put you in touch with USEF. If you're a physiotherapist or interested in learning about classification, that's another thing that just many people don't have access to because of their location. The country is just really big, and so getting people out there to get classified is really hard. So you meet with a classifier, you get what's called bench tested, and so they'll do lots of tests on your body, reflexes, range of motion, strength, and then they'll determine your grade before you go. So it's just like able-bodied riding. You start at the national level, and just as a side note, I could talk about this for hours, like the national and the transition from national to international. But one of the key points to transitioning is then you have to get international classification. So you get an FEI classification. And that's done by classifiers that have then gone through the additional FEI certification. And you basically do the same thing again, but it's just making sure that the conclusion is the same. There's very rarely a difference between the two. The only time that something like that would change is if you had like a progressive disease, something that continued to get worse and affected your movement further. Um, or if you had an additional accident and say you lost another leg or something, and that might change your classification. But generally, once you are classified, you are in that grade. And it's tough. It's something that some people, like everything in dressage, it's subjective, right? So
Mhm.
it can be really hard. It's really, really, really hard to categorize the human body. And what some people are stronger at, others are not. What they do not take into consideration is your skill. So if you're really strong and you pass a certain classification, you can't get downgraded because you're not a good rider. So that's also a really
Wow.
interesting direction. Like we have some riders that say, "Oh, I'm going to do para dressage because I'm not very good and it'll be easier." Well, if you get classified as a grade 4, you have to learn how to ride third level dressage. Um, so it's not something that takes into consideration your skill. Actually, the more skill you have, the better you're going to do within your grade. So as a coach, I really work on developing the rider's skill outside of just para and look at competing in able-bodied classes as well, because many para riders are very competitive able-bodied. There's a lot of para riders that are also Grand Prix riders, but then when
Wow.
they want to compete internationally, they can compete in their grade. So that's what makes dressage and para dressage parallel. It's about the training and the skill set of the rider. It ends up, we make some accommodations because of your disability, but in the end, the riding lesson is the same.
Okay. Talk to me about, just to make sure I put a fine point on it, like for my own curiosity. Talk to me about somebody who has like a hip replacement or a knee replacement or a lot of metal in their ankle. Um, at what point do we cross into para territory versus not?
You have to be pretty severely disabled to be a para rider. So that's a question I get all the time, which I think is another reason why I had mentioned to you at the beginning that I get a lot of people that reach out to me because they think I'm less scary because I work with para riders, and they're wrong.
She's clearly very scary, you guys.
But if you have a hip replacement or you have a joint replacement, you're probably not disabled enough to. Now, if you have a hip replacement and then you don't have a leg, that's different. But the criteria for para is pretty selective. Something that one of the coaches told me early on in para dressage that kind of confused me a little bit at first, but the more I got to know it, the more sense it made, is that para dressage is an exclusive sport. It's not an inclusive sport. And that sounds kind of mean, but you have to be disabled to do para dressage. And that line is actually more than you think. And it's kind of like watching able-bodied dressage. You watch Grand Prix and you go, gosh, that looks easy, doesn't it? Because when you're really good, it does look really easy. And we know that it's not. So it's definitely something that you can always ask if you might be qualified for it. And really, the only person that can tell you is a classifier. And you can always go and get classified and have them tell you, I'm really sorry, you're not disabled enough. You have too much strength through your body. And these bionic joints don't count as a severe enough disability. And what I like to remind people of is that grade 5 is really hard.
Seriously.
So I have a lot of riders, like if they just got classified and they say, okay, well, I'm pretty new to dressage and I just got classified as a grade 4 or grade 5. I say, okay, well, we're starting with training level because it's easier than grade 5. So we have to go back and start at the beginning and build those fundamental training building blocks as we go up the level, just like you would with any other rider. You can't just say, oh, grade 5, it's para, so it's easy.
Yes.
But that's a great question because I get that asked all the time.
Yeah, I bet. Tell us, so you're a certified para dressage trainer. Can you tell us about the certification process, and more importantly, probably, like, what are you being taught as a para dressage instructor that differs from being a regular dressage instructor? What are the types of things that you're learning and putting in your toolbox that make you capable of working with para riders?
That's a great question. So the USEF offers a para certification course that you can take with an exam at the end. Actually, it's very similar to like what USCA offers for the trainers class, the trainers certification. And USDF is actually also rolling out a trainers certification program, which I will be participating in too. You learn about the rules of para, a lot of like what I told you about the classification process, what competition looks like, and then a little bit of implementation, but it's dressage. So if you don't have the basic understanding of the training scale and classical dressage training of both horse and rider, you need to learn that first because it's exactly the same for the para riders. The course kind of goes a little bit more into like the nuancy stuff, like what's a dispensation certificate? Why is that required? What are some of the non-standard aids that we can use? Let's watch some riders work. And many times it's instructors that come and say, hey, I have this rider that wants to come ride in my program, but I'm not really sure where to start because she was riding in a therapy program and now she wants to do dressage. That was me. Or it's a therapeutic riding instructor, like a path instructor that says, I really want to delve deeper into the sport of dressage and transition my rider out of therapy. And both of them have their challenges. I think the best is when you're a dressage trainer and you integrate para into your program. And it's a lot easier than it sounds. In Europe, for example, there's para riders everywhere. It's much more inclusive that way. I think here, a lot of people just don't know about it. And so there's kind of those selective pockets of riders, but that's been USEF's goal, is to advertise and talk more about para and make it really inclusive. And USDF is working on that too, of highlighting para riders so that more riders are aware that it's a sport that exists. So the classification, or the class is a couple of days, and then you do oral and a written exam, and then you get the certification. And I think what it does is it gives you a peace of mind that you've done it, right? It gives you a tremendous connection of contacts, because most of the time when we're doing something, I kind of like fly by the seat of my pants. So if I don't know how to deal with a problem, there's a whole bunch of people I can reach out to, because somebody's definitely dealt with it before, right? So some kind of an equipment thing, or we have a question about, some nuancy, horse, a bit, or something like that, right? Where we're just trying to figure it out. It's a really nice way to connect with people. And then you get listed on the USEF website as another point of contact. So that's also where people should go first if they're looking for a coach, because it will tell you the certified coaches.
Amazing. Talk to us about how you think about horse training differently with para riders. So if a para rider doesn't have a limb, for example, on one side, and doesn't have use of that aid, whether that can be replaced or potentially not replaced, how are you thinking about training a horse? Like if you put a para rider on an eco, are you kind of retraining him for this new way of communicating, or what's your thought process as a trainer when you're kind of putting the pieces together between what the rider is able to do and how the horse is communicated to?
So this is the part of the sport that is the most amazing, because horses are incredible and they figure it out. And I don't really do anything very weird. Like, horses are so intuitive. They know exactly what they're doing. And I would say the most important thing that I look for in a para horse is a good character. Because when you have, I mean, it's kind of like what everybody wants, right? You want a horse that has a good character and that's aware and eager to learn. You can teach horses pretty much anything. A great example is I have a rider that rides with one rein because she's partially paralyzed on the left side of her body, so she has no use of her left arm. And so we're like, well, how are we going to teach this horse to turn without two reins? It's a lot easier than you think it is. She figures it out, and the horse listens because they listen, right? They don't understand our language. And it's kind of like if I went to Europe and I sat on a horse that knows how to walk, track, canter just from my seat. I don't need to learn the German way of asking for canter, right? So they adapt really fast. There's little things that I find really helpful. So we can use voice commands for a lot of the para riders. So grades 1 through 3 are allowed to use their voice, even at international competition. So say I have a rider that has a hard time getting the horse forward off the leg, I'll make sure that we use a really consistent voice cue. And it's a lot like lunging, right? So whether it's, sometimes it needs to be specific to the rider. So some riders want a kiss sound, or I use like the sound a lot to help with the trot. So we teach them to do that, and they pick up on it really quickly. And horses are smart, so then they're like, oh, I know what that means. And it's really about just being really consistent. Same with a downward transition, however you want to teach them. Um, I'll often ride the horses in the same equipment that the riders go in. So I'll practice riding the horse with one rein for my one-handed rider. Usually I do it way worse than she does. She's much better at it than I am because I'm so used to having two, right? But I'll just kind of practice it a little bit with him. But what usually helps the most is if I do ride him with the two reins and I really help get the connection and the throughness. So then she can get on and use a little bit more of her seat. What we really focus on with riders is the ability to use the seat and to use the balance that they have and the control of the trunk, more than like kicking or having to use an aggressive leg or spur aid. And just like we know with able-bodied, we can teach our horses to be sensitive, right? We can also teach them to be really dull. So if we inundate them with so much information and so many aids all the time, some horses will just shut down and stop listening. But we can create reactivity in a good way by lightening the aids so that somebody who has a tiny little leg can get a response, right? So that's a little bit what we practice. I'll do little things like, so some of the para tests have a rein back, and that can be hard if you don't have two legs to slide back or two reins. So we'll do different things like use the whip on the shoulder. But again, I'll ask like I would normally ask, and then use that additional cue. And eventually the horse just does it with the whip on the shoulder. I love briding my horses, so we really give them a lot of treats. So everybody's love is for sale, and I'll tell you, it works great. So they do something right and they get a cookie. But it's really not anything like circusy or complicated. It's good horsemanship and good training. And I think between the coach and the rider, it's just being consistent. And then it's really a clear language for the horse.
It's so inspiring. It makes me want to YouTube para dressage tests right now and just sit back and appreciate the horses and riders.
If you want to feel inspired or just cry your eyes out, watch para because it's incredible. It's really amazing. And a lot of times you'll watch the riders and go, oh, they're so much better than I am.
Yeah.
And that's the cool part. That's our goal, right? We want to make it just parallel with able-bodied dressage.
How cool. I hear you using terms like able-bodied, and it brings to mind that sometimes conversations about riding with disabilities or para dressage, para sport, whatever it is, like I can feel hesitant to have the conversation because I'm not sure if I'm being tactful in my use of words. And I think that the conversations are so important to be like, it's important the conversations are happening. And it's of course important for like somebody in a coach's shoes to be able to have the conversations with their students if the need arises. What insight do you have around that topic, either as just a rider or if you're giving advice to a coach who may have somebody who has a disability and needs to have that conversation?
Sure, using the right vocabulary is often, we don't want to offend anyone, right? And usually it's just our kind of lack of experience being around riders that are disabled or people that are disabled in wheelchairs. And I think it's sort of human nature to be uncomfortable with something that's different, right? So most of the time it always comes from a good place, right? We don't want to say anything wrong. So what I do is I ask and I say, what would you like me to refer to you as? I use the terms able-bodied and para. Some riders don't like that. They are fine with being called disabled, or they want to have a different label used for them. For me, really, when I talk about it, and that's kind of how USEF talks about it too, is it's a para dressage rider and an able-bodied dressage rider. But my suggestion, and this has been what's worked for me too, is I ask people. And a lot of times they want to tell you. They want to tell you what's going on. They want to tell you about what's going on with their bodies, the things that they struggle with. And I think if it's an open dialogue and you take it however they give it to you, that's a totally appropriate way to do it. But anyone that has a physical impairment or a disability, if you ask them, they will gladly tell you what's going on. They would love to share what they have to deal with and what they're going through. And they're not embarrassed. We're the ones that usually hold that shame and embarrassment because of our insecurities or we're uncomfortable. That's been my experience. Every person that I've spoken to and I've asked, like, what are some of the things that are hard for you? What does your body do when this happens? Or have you ever experienced any specific kind of pain when doing something else? And I just ask these things, and they can always say, I don't feel comfortable telling you that. And it's much easier if you make it just an open dialogue and a safe place to talk about it, because people will share what they're comfortable with.
It makes so much sense that what you're often met with is an eagerness to share. And I'm sure it just feels great to have somebody on the other end listening. And in your case, like ready to help and ready to like experiment with them on what's going to work and how to make it work. And I think when a lot of us were younger, there it was like ingrained in us, don't ask, don't
Right,
stare, and
right.
it kind of comes to life in kind of a cruel way. Like
It's super
these are
isolating that
yeah.
way. Then you ostracize those riders. Everyone needs to be integrated. Like,
Mhm.
okay, we have to make an accommodation, we have to get a ramp here, like whatever, it's fine. The whole our whole society has a fear of disability,
Mhm.
and we think that we're being inclusive by like separating uh disabilities, right? But it's like the idea of like separate but equal, and that's not equal, right?
Mhm.
We need to just make it easier for everybody, because any of us could be in that situation, especially if we're riding horses at any time, right? So it's just so important to have an open dialogue and an open conversation about it. And the more time that I've spent with riders that are limited in mobility, like have wheelchairs or walkers, the more I realize that the whole world is set up so against them with
Yeah.
so many stupid things, like the way doors open or the size of a bathroom and stuff that I never noticed, right? Because it was not a problem that I had to deal with. And when it's brought to light, it takes everybody advocating for that. And as a coach, it makes me decide on what horse shows I go to,
I bet.
right?
Yeah,
And if we have
definitely.
a problem, we talk to show management about it and say, hey, this we need some help with this. And guess what? Most of the time they go, gosh, I never even thought about it. I mean, I
Totally.
had no idea, right?
Yes. That all makes complete sense, and it's great to have more and more people being advocates and aware, and it just takes that ripple effect. Let's jump into some of these member questions because I want to make sure that we address some more specific questions that we got ahead of time. The first one is if someone has a degenerative issue, where would you recommend that they go once they hit the point that they need more guidance than a regular trainer can give?
Okay. So if you have a degenerative issue, your trainer should be able to help you with that, right? And what it's going to just require is thinking outside of the box. So, uh, say, for example, you have arthritis or something I have a lot of riders with is like carpal tunnel or, degenerative hands, right? As we get older, and especially women, right, our knuckles and everything and the strength in our hands fall apart, and that sucks because we have to hold the reins, right? So what I do, first of all, you got to talk about it, right? Nobody knows what you're feeling, so you need to voice what's happening. And there's a lot of ways to help you. There's adaptive equipment like different types of reins, and we can change the tack, the bridle that your horse goes in. There's different kinds of gloves. There's therapies too. So stepping outside of the barn and saying, okay, I might need to go to PT for this. I'm just using hands as an example. There's a lot of things that your physical therapist can do to help with your hands and mobility and strengthening your hands and figuring out like maybe there's a medication that you need to take, or if I mean, we have ibuprofen like on tap in the barn. But, maybe it's a thing where you take a medication before your ride instead of after your ride because it helps you to reduce the inflammation before we go into the lesson. Um, I am not sponsored by Correct Connect, but I love their product. So they have great adaptive equipment, and I buy a lot of their stuff or recommend people to. They have different types of reins, they have different toggles for the reins. They have balancing equipment that help, right? We use the neck straps and things like that. And if there's a specific thing that you're having a really hard time figuring out, reach out to the para community. USEF has a great network. There's lots of para, if you're a Facebook person, there's lots of para dressage Facebook pages where you can post something and say, hey, my ankle's doing this weird thing. What do you guys suggest? Or reach out to a para coach. Because even if you aren't qualified as a para rider, I think we have a little bit, we've just like seen more, so we can kind of come up with some ideas for some adaptive equipment that might help you in your regular riding. They're not going to be things that you can show in, but that's a different, that's a different segment we can get into. But being able to train more comfortably at home, that helps you a lot. And it makes your horse happier too, right? If they can understand what you're trying to ask, or you feel like your aids are getting muffled because of an impairment, we can do different things creatively to try to make it more clear for your horse too.
On the topic of equipment, Amanda asked if there's any equipment or gear that you find useful on or off the horse to help strengthen or stretch. She said like resistance bands or things like that. And I would love to just add on to it. I mean, you mentioned Correct Connect has a lot of equipment that could be helpful, but anything that really falls under this umbrella that comes to mind, I would love to hear about.
I'm assuming that she's talking about strengthening the rider, right?
Yes. Yep.
Not the horse. Okay, because we have two athletes, right? So that's what makes riding and training so fun, is we have to get both athletes fit. So yeah, Correct Connect is great because they just have like a lot of stuff. I also have like had some equipment made. We get like ladder reins and some I'm trying to think of what the websites are, but you can look up adaptive equipment. And again, anyone can ping me if there's a specific question. Another thing that I love using are bands. So like the TheraBands that you use in your physical therapy practice. Now there's like a ton of them that are marketed for horses and riders, excuse me. And you probably pay a ton of money because they put a horse on it, but it's just a regular TheraBand that you would use from a physical therapist. So you can buy the horsey brand ones, and they'll usually come with a little instruction manual, or you can probably find bands like that on Amazon. If you have a physical therapist that you work with, they will gladly give you a whole bunch of bands, and those bands are great. So there's a couple different ways that you can use the bands, like over the shoulder, and you've probably seen some of the ads because the body awareness has become more and more a focal point of training and riding. And that's really important because it's always our fault that something's not working. And the more we can find our strength and our balance through ourselves, the better we are. I'm very fortunate that we have a client here in our barn that's the physio for the USA Para Dressage Team. So she offers all kinds of exercises and programs, and her website and contact information is Refine Your Ride. Joanna Franz is an amazing resource. I know that Coach Sando does different kinds of exercises too for body alignment. I've done his program and it was awesome, but it's like all or right, you got to like go all out. And for some people that they might not be ready for that. But if you want like a rider seat assessment or some exercises to kind of help with strengthening the right parts of your body or what bands to use where, I highly suggest reaching out to Joanna at Refine Your Ride. She does like rider alignment and then how we can use the bands in the right way to like get you all straightened up. That's very, very helpful.
On the topic of body awareness, do you have any suggestions for your riders who, when they don't have you on the ground to be making adjustments using your eyes, do you have suggestions for riders in their schooling rides to ensure body alignment or at least ensure that they're aware of what their body is doing?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important thing to learn how to ride mindfully and like kind of be able to tune out all of the outside distractions and focus on yourself for a minute. And when you are able to do that, I usually always start from the top and go down. So I'll start with my head. I kind of think about where my posturing is. my shoulders. I mean, we've all heard it, right? Every instructor's like, shoulders back, elbows in. But like, are your shoulders actually back? Are your elbows in, or are you just thinking about it? And like allowing yourself to move in the saddle. And that good alignment does not mean being a frozen statue. What it means is being able to move with the dynamic movement of your horse. It's not a bicycle. So we are moving. And a lot of riders that I work with feel like, okay, if I'm perfectly still and I just stay here, everything will be fine. But actually, it's allowing your body to move that's really important, and following the movement of the horse, and just kind of like going through a little checklist through your body. Like, where are all my parts? Can I feel my seat bones? Do I know where my seat bones are? I like to sometimes have riders put their hand under their seat bones and say, okay, are you like crushing your hand on the right seat bone and like really digging into that right side? Well, guess what? Your horse is going to feel that too. So I think having sort of a self-assessment is a really helpful way to do it. And then if you do get outside help, I mean, any coach is going to tell you this, and any physical therapist is going to tell you the exercises that you do on the ground off your horse are so important. And staying committed and consistent. You don't have to do 2 hours of it. Do 10 minutes. If you could do 10 minutes of stretching before you get on, it makes a huge difference for you long term. And it does actually get easier. And you'll notice when it becomes something that's a habit, when you get on and you haven't stretched, you're like, ooh, I feel terrible, all out of whack, right? So that's an easy thing to add into your routine and say, okay, I have to have 5 to 10 minutes to kind of roll around on the floor and stretch myself out. And again, I kind of recommend getting those exercises from someone who can specifically set them up for what your body needs. Like, are you tight through your shoulders? Are you tight through your hips? Do you have one leg that wants to turn one way? So we have to do something a little bit more for that. But that always translates into your feel in the saddle.
That's such a great suggestion. I was curious if you were going to say there's like a one size fits all stretching routine. It sounds more like it would be much better to have an assessment from someone who knows what they're doing. So you're
And I
doing
wouldn't
what's
say
best
that
for
it's
you.
that you can't do like a basic stretch warm up. I mean, everything is good, right? And the
Mhm.
more active we are and the older we get, the tighter we get. It's just the reality of it, right? So even doing things that feel good, like you lay on your back and you open your shoulders, or you stand in the door. I love a good door stretch, right? I don't know what that's called, probably called a door stretch, but like that feels great. Or I'll grab my leg and pull it back and my hip will crunch a little bit. And or I like the just like laying on the floor and letting my knees swing back and forth to kind of loosen up my low back. It doesn't have to be anything super complicated. It's really how I like following directions. I'm very like type A that way. So for me, it's helpful if somebody is like, do this, do that, do this, then I can do it. But if you're just rolling around and stretching yourself out, it's not going to hurt you, right? You're not going to push yourself to the point of pain. Even that is well worth it. But I think that's part of the mindfulness, right? Just like learning to listen to your body, and being able to tune out all the other distractions that we have in that time that we're at the barn in the saddle. And um, that's super important.
As you were talking about just rolling around and stretching and kind of loosening up, I'm picturing what we let our horses do, like go long and
Yeah.
low, overbend to the inside, overbend to the outside. And none of us are overthinking that or wondering like, is that really necessary? It seems like, the right thing to do for ourselves too.
Yeah, I love the dead bug just sort of like floundering
Yeah,
around, but I feel better after. So um
right. You can't argue with that.
yeah.
Amanda has a couple other great questions. One is, what is your advice from coming back from a human injury or learning to cope with old injuries? So Amanda broke her ankle last year and it healed, but it like low key bugs her all the time, she said. Um, and in the same vein, what's your advice for preventing the compensation that will come after something like that?
Well, I feel you, girl. I broke my back a couple years ago, which was
Oh
not
my
something I
God.
ever expected to do. And I'm fine, by the way. I didn't have to have surgery or anything, but I fractured two vertebrae in my back and had a compressed disc. And the best part about it was I had gone to the emergency room, gotten a CT scan, and they said, "You're fine. You probably just hit your head." And I was like, "Oh, I definitely hit my head." And so I rode for 3 weeks until I
Oh
was in
my
so much pain that even the horse girl was like, "I don't think this is right," and then found out that they didn't read the CT scans right, and that I did in fact have two uh, fractured vertebrae. And so, like, I get it. It's hard, and it's something that lingers for a long time. And I still have that pain and discomfort um, that that's always just kind of going to be there, right? And you wonder, like, oh, I wonder if it'd be different before then, if I didn't have this injury. But basically, the moral of the story is be gracious and kind to yourself and your body because it's doing the best that it can. And arthritis is not something you can stop. So it's very similar to what we do with horses, right? Motion is lotion. So movement is key, but you have to do it sort of within your comfort level and know that it can increase over time with continued, you know, motion and therapies. Listen to your physical therapist, do everything that they say, and don't forget about it because those exercises, your range of motion exercise, if you have an ankle, you probably do all kinds of like ankle stretches and movements and things like that to strengthen the structures that surround the joint. Keep doing those because that's what's going to keep your joint mobile. Is it ever going to be the same? Nope, probably not. Um, there's great therapies that you probably do on your horse and you don't do for yourself because why would you get a massage or go to the chiropractor when you could do it for your horse? Great things that I've found really helpful are laser. Laser therapy is amazing. If you have a vet that's coming out and doing laser on your horse, like probably laser you too. There's several companies that have like the little handheld lasers, and you can justify it by getting it for you and your horse. So you can use it on yourself and your horse. I use my little handheld laser all the time. I recently lost a toenail and I use the laser on my foot, and it works really well. They're not crazy expensive, and that's something that's super helpful. A big trend in the industry is MagnaWave and PEMF. That's a great thing for your body. It's non-invasive. You're not going to hurt yourself with that. If you have a practitioner that comes out and works on your horse, a lot of times they can plug you in too, and you can sit on a mat. I used it a lot for my back, and it was a game changer. It really helped me a lot. I still use it when I've had a long day and I've ridden 8 horses or something, and at the end of the day, I'm like, "Ah, my back hurts." I'll do some PEMF on it and stuff like that. You can ride with a brace too, so that's something that you can try and play with. Of course, it can be a little hard with boots. So with riders that I've had that have ankle issues, we'll often use boots and half chaps. So we can have a brace, and it doesn't have to be like the hard plastic ones, sometimes just a sock or using a bandage around around the ankle just to stabilize the ankle. Another thing that can really help is I love rubber bands. I will buy the bit like long rubber bands off Amazon, or if there's a lot of event riders here, so the rubber bands that you use over your skull cap to hold your silk on your skull cap is great. I can do like a little tutorial on this too, but you can actually band your foot to the stirrup so that your foot doesn't slide through the stirrup. It'll break. Don't worry. It's been tested many times. So if you do have an accidental ejection, it'll just snap. But that can help prevent the flexion of your ankle, which is often what hurts is like overbending the ankle. So I use bands a lot to go over the foot. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I think just being kind to yourself and understanding that like it's okay if you're not perfect. We probably wouldn't pass a pre-purchase exam. And it kind of gives you a little bit more understanding of the horse's struggles too. When you're like, yeah, they've got some arthritis in their hocks, and you're like, yeah, I do too. And some days are better than others, but yeah, I would say if you don't have a physical therapist, they're really helpful. It's a great resource.
That's great advice. And Amanda's last question was about your thoughts and advice around scoliosis.
Mm. Yeah, so scoliosis is obviously very personal and different to everybody. There's a lot of people that ride with scoliosis, and it's going to become a comfort thing. And again, something that you can work with your physical therapist on. Another great tool for joints or structures that don't want to stay where they are supposed to is KT tape. If you learn how to KT tape yourself, you can like pull a shoulder back or offer some balance that way. So obviously, sometimes the KT tape, if it's on your back, you need to have a friend do it. But if you learn how to do it with a physiotherapist, or I mean, a lot of these things you can look up on YouTube and stuff. If say you have a weird low back and you can feel your low back shift, you can use some KT tape to help support it. I have riders that ride with back braces, just to offer yourself some support if you're feeling like, okay, this twist in my spine doesn't help, using the back brace. And you're allowed to ride with your stirrups at 2 different lengths. So if your legs are actually 2 different lengths, it's really okay if one stirrup is longer than the other stirrup. Your horse is going to figure it out. Your goal is to try to get your pelvis neutral. If your legs aren't quite the same, that's okay. The most important point of contact with your horse is your seat. So I have a rider that has a twist too through her pelvis, but if we lengthen one stirrup and we shorten the other one, she's like almost level. So you give yourself permission to experiment with stuff like that. And your horse is pretty much going to tell you too. If you're really crooked and you're like, why is the horse always drifting to the left? Well, it's probably because your seat bones aren't being clear. So that playing with the stirrup length and all that stuff can be really helpful too.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I love it. Um, okay. On the topic of kind of more the mental side of things, Aaron said, what do you do when you're having truly an off day? When all the work just doesn't matter that day and your body just isn't cooperating? What's your advice?
I love to have a good cry. Uh, just
Me too.
I sometimes a good cry it's really cathartic. Don't beat yourself up about it. Hang out with your horse. You don't have to ride to be doing things with your horses. A lot of us are probably on a platform like this because we're super driven and we're really goal oriented. You got out there, you got to the barn, you're good. It's okay. It's okay to not come out and do something every day. And guess what? Professionals are the same. Sometimes I come out and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then my body's like, no, you're not. Not today. And that's okay. It's really okay. It's like one more day of just being and being able to be at the barn and be with your horse, and that's a gift in itself. So if you do struggle with kind of the feelings of exhaustion through like the physical stresses and all of that, talk to people who have similar ailments or are going through the same thing. Sports psychologists are amazing for this. I had to talk to one after I broke my back because I was like, I don't know, what am I going to do now? Like, is this bad? I'm a little lost. And it was really helpful just to talk to somebody about it and kind of get it out. But, don't hold in those feelings, let them out, let it rip. The greatest thing about horses is they don't talk to you. So you don't have to explain yourself to them in any way. And if you feel like it's happening a lot, reach out. you can reach out to me, if it's something where you're like, this is always happening. I'm always getting this pain in a certain spot and it's literally stopping me from riding. Maybe an outsider's perspective can help, or just some thoughts to see if maybe you need an equipment change or something that didn't even cross your mind might be worth toying with. So you can go kind of down a road of experimentation.
What a nice answer. I love that. Yeah, bringing it back to gratitude is like such a powerful thing in a lot of situations. Okay, I can't believe we're almost to the end of the hour, but we are. And so as a final question to kind of tie a bow on it, now my dogs are going crazy.
I have a question.
Yeah, seriously. Like, no, don't let it end. Are there misconceptions that you wish more riders and coaches understood about riding with physical impairments?
You can do it. You're fine. Most people have physical impairments. None of us are perfect. And I think your harshest critic is always yourself. And that's people that have actual impairments, and then some of us that don't, but we're so hard on ourselves. Your horses don't care. They don't care at all. That's great too. They don't care if you have all of your eyes or all of your legs, or if you have a false hip or anything. They don't care at all. So you would be amazed how many more people are like you than are not like you. Uh, if you need a good dose of inspiration, watch some para dressage. It's awesome. I'm sure that a lot of the Olympics are still available to watch. I binged watched the Para Olympics, and then I also watched like a lot of the other sports, which was amazing because there's so many sports I had never heard of. The gentleman that won parachuting didn't have arms. Riddle me that. It was
Seriously.
amazing. It was like mind blowing. So, just kind of surround yourself with other things like that. And I think it'll cheer you up. It's really amazing what people can do, and you're definitely not alone in any of that.
And knowing that is so key for all of us, really, in whether it's an endeavor like this, in anything. Knowing that you're not alone and you're in good company and finding inspiration in that community is so powerful. So I love that advice, and I love that you gave us different places we can go to find these people. Tell us where people can find you. Do you clinic? Are there other resources available if they want more from you?
Well, apparently people come from the woodworks to find
Yes,
me on
I do.
all these. So yes, you can find me on the internet, like where you find most useful and useless things. If you Google me, you'll come up to my website, but my website is lchequestrian.com. I'm obviously also on social media because it's 2025, and if you aren't, who are you? Um, I still am from the generation that grew up without social media. So I'm actually like turning into the person that now needs help doing it because I'm like, I don't know how to do this. But yeah, follow me on Instagram. I try to post like funny stuff. And it's a great way to connect. You can always reach out to me. Yes, I love clinicking. I'm definitely doing a lot more of that now. I have my own farm. So when I first started, I was like really tied to this place, and I still am. It's
Mhm.
like the only thing I ever do. But personally, a goal of mine is to be able to get out of Florida more. I would love to have you come to my farm. You want to come? You want to hang out? You want to watch lessons? I have a totally open door policy. Come anytime. We'll let you in. You can sit and watch and, kind of feed off the energy there. If you're interested in hosting me for a clinic, I would love that. That sounds great. You can reach out anytime.
Amazing. And are you doing virtual lessons right now or not so much?
I do virtual lessons. I've actually found them super helpful. I Right now, the people that I teach virtually, I have also taught in person. So I found that really helpful because I can kind of play off of what I know. But if I have someone new that's interested in virtual lessons or like some kind of a chat about some compensating aids or something like that, I'd love to do that. Something that would be helpful would be if you sent me a video too beforehand. So and it can be bad. Like it can be, oh my gosh, this is what's happening and I don't know. Then I can brainstorm beforehand. But yeah, I think virtual lessons are awesome. It's another great way to connect with people. I take virtual lessons too. And because none of us have time to do anything and we don't have time to prioritize ourselves. And in the summer, I love teaching virtual lessons because I'm inside.
Totally. You can do that from the air conditioning.
It's great.
Well, that's amazing. I really hope that you get to know some more riders and Ride IQ members through all of those things and that they get to know you. And this was such a treat, like even more so than I expected. And my cheeks hurt from smiling just from hearing, honestly, from hearing you talk so passionately about something. You could be talking about anything, but it's just fun to chat with somebody who is so, optimistic and passionate. So thank you for sharing that with us tonight.
It's my pleasure. I'm really lucky and I really love what I do. I'm so lucky that I get to do this. I never actually thought I was going to be a professional. So the fact that life has kind of taken me this direction is awesome. And it's because of people that I've met that I've gotten involved in para dressage. It was never really a plan of mine. And yeah, you never know who you're going to meet and how you connect. And yeah, I'm glad I get to share that with other people. So yeah, anyone who feels like they want to reach out anytime.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you to everyone who's listening and have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye, guys.